Hello there, science class. I wanted to give you a quick review before we move on to sedimentary rocks, and I want to give you a review over your igneous rocks. But again, we'll start off with a good little poem by Lane Owens. And there is much confusion about igneous intrusion. A dike is just a crack that fills intruded bedding plains or seals. A batholith is over 50 miles square. Laccoliths are smaller, singular, and rare. Now, when we talk about igneous rocks, just remember, igneous rocks form when magma cools and solidifies. Now, the formation of magma depends on three factors. One factor is temperature, second factor is pressure, and the third factor is the presence of fluids that is available in the rock itself. So, when we classify igneous rocks, we classify it according to where the magma cools and hardens. Now, an intrusive igneous rock, like granite. Granite is an intrusive igneous rock that cools deep inside the Earth's crust. So it's magma because magma is inside the Earth's crust, and it cools at a rate that's a little slow, and it forms large crystals. Now, extrusive igneous rock is lava that cools at the Earth's surface. An example of that would be basalt. So basalt cools on the Earth's surface, granite cools in the Earth's surface. So intrusive igneous rock inside, extrusive is outside. Now, on the textures of igneous rock, and you'll be responsible for these on the test, you have coarse grain. So coarse grain are composed of large mineral grains, and again, granite is a great example of a coarse grain igneous rock. You have fine grains, which are composed of small crystals like rhyolite. So rhyolite would be an example of a fine-grained igneous rock. We have porphyritic textures, which has a mixture of large and small crystals. And again, porphyritic can be granite. So granite can be coarse grain, but it can also be a porphyritic texture. Glassy texture is a little easier. It's when magma cools very quickly and there are no gas particles, a very small percentage of gas particles available. And an example of a glassy texture is the crowd favorite of obsidian. Now, vesicular texture is when lava, which is on the Earth's surface, cools very rapidly and has a large percentage of gases. And an example of a vesicular texture is right here, the scoria and pumice. I'm glad none of the females in class have stolen my pumice stone yet, and I've left it alone, which is nice. Thank you, girls. Now, felsic rock is a composition of igneous rock that forms when magma that contains a large proportion of silica. Granite, again, is an example of a felsic rock. Obsidian and pumice are also examples, and they generally have a light color. Now, mafic rock forms when magma that contains a lower proportion of silica than felsic rock. And generally, mafic rock is a little darker in color like your basalt. Now, next we're going to talk a little on intrusive igneous rock structures. So these are structures that form inside the Earth's crust. And we have batholiths, which is the largest of all the intrusions. So a batholith is an intrusion that spreads over 100 kilometers square. We have a stock, which is an intrusive formation that spread under 100 kilometers squared. So batholith over 100 kilometers squared, a stock is under 100 kilometers squared. Now we have a laccolith, which is when magma flows between rock layers and spreads. It spreads upward in the shape of a dome, and then it hardens, which is a laccolith. And we have a seal, which is simply when magma flows between the rock layers and hardens. And dikes are when magma forces through rock layers by following existing vertical structures, and then they solidify and a dike is formed. Now, moving on. So again, batholiths, stocks, laccoliths, seals, and dikes. So, any questions there, make sure you come see me during Encore. And that's a good review we have on our intrusive rock structures. Now, the extrusive rock structures are pretty simple. We have lava flows and lava plateaus. So you have intrusive igneous structures, extrusive igneous structures. And if you know this, guys, you should be good to go on your next test. So we'll just keep working and getting better and rock on. And we'll see you guys shortly.